Okay. So the do now on the board says, you have been kidnapped and are completely helpless. Describe your feelings. So just to give you just a little precursor to this, just pretend your hands are tied behind your back, right? And your feet are shackled. So you're not going anywhere. Maybe you're in the trunk of a car. You've been kidnapped. You can't resist. So as tough as you think you are, what are your feelings? Okay, and I'm going to start the timer for 2 minutes, and I want you to just free write. It's not a big deal if you're in complete sentences, misspellings. I don't care about that. So it's kind of a free write, and just get your ideas down. Okay. Ryan, you have a question?
Could we write it in third person?
Sure.
Yeah.
That's fine. Just do the best you can to keep writing as much as you can. I'm not reading it right now. Okay, you can write a little more. About 20 seconds. Okay, you can stop. You don't have to even finish the sentence you're on if you don't want to. Okay. Somebody's going to share with me. What were your feelings? What would your feelings be? Chloe, go ahead.
I'd be scared and frightened and thinking, what is going to happen to me? Am I going to die or get raped or be a sex slave like they said on CNN?
Okay.
And more. And how am I going to do to get away or break free, and how to get out of here in this situation, and how I'm going to call for help, and how to get this rope and chains off of me, and where are they taking me, or am I going to get to drown or get diced? Okay,
so notice she didn't have complete sentences in there, and that's perfectly fine because on a quick write, like the do now suggest, you want to just get down as many thoughts and ideas as you possibly can in the time limit. So she brought up a lot of emotions. Anybody else? Mariah, what'd you put?
My feelings wouldn't be very hard to think about if I got kidnapped. I'd cry and try my best to make myself stop, and I would have that feeling of all hope is lost. Honestly, I would give up. If I died that day, I would.
Wow. She said if she were to die that day, she would. Like, all hope would be lost. If you were kidnapped like this, I would imagine there would be some sorts of feelings at first, like of hope, right? Like you're gonna get out of it somehow. You know, we always try to think of like the glass is half full instead of half empty. And so you try to think to yourself, there's gonna be a way. I'm gonna get free somehow. But after a certain period of time, would those feelings start to fade? Yeah, they would definitely start to fade. So, in thinking about the slave trade and how the slave trade ended in 1801, and here we are working toward the Civil War and looking at the causes of the Civil War. Slavery was still going on, and the slave trade was still occurring. Slave trade actually started to boom under the oppression of the law. If we think about like prohibition in this country, when they outlawed drinking, and they told people you can't drink. When they outlawed drinking, what did people want to do more? Yeah, they wanted to drink more. So there's always a good amount of money that can be made through things that are illegal. So the slave trade was one of them. When we look at the case of the Amistad, and we look at what happened to the people that were involved, like we've seen in the video, it shows the degree that people will go to in order to make money. And what were they making money off of?
Slaves.
Off of slaves. So I've got a reading handout for you. And we're going to look at this together. We're going to look at this together, and I'm going to do some of the reading, and I'm going to allow some of you to read as well. And then we're going to break apart the reading so that we have a good handle on it. This is the Amistad case. We ended up with 6 in this row today. Guitar was here, one for your guitar. Okay. Looking at the Amistad case, the first paragraph here says, well, I'm looking at it, and there are some names here that we might need to go over. When we come to them in the reading, first of all, the name of the ship is the Amistad. It's a Cuban ship. There's a town in here in this first paragraph, and we pronounce the name of that town or city Puerto Príncipe. Puerto Príncipe. I see two men, Pedro Montes and Jose Ruiz. And I'm scanning down. Third paragraph. Do you see before they could, LT period, Thomas R. Gedney? What does LT period mean? Does anybody know? It's a military term. What do you think?
Lieutenant.
Lieutenant? Yeah. Is that what you were going to say? Yep, lieutenant. So when you see LT period, that's lieutenant. Working our way down. William Holabird comes up, and then our president, Martin Van Buren. So those are some of the names that we might have gotten hung up on. Also, abolitionists is in there as well. Abolitionists, were they for or against slavery? We wanted to abolish. What does that mean? Against. Okay. Looking at the reading here. In June of 1839, 2 Spaniards, Pedro Montes and Jose Ruiz, bought 53 enslaved Africans in Havana, Cuba. The enslaved persons had been illegally kidnapped in West Africa and imported into Cuba. What is imported? What does that mean? Kind of.
Like transported.
Okay, transported, sure. But more specifically, what is it? Shipped, okay? More specific. Thank you, Amar. What do you think, Matt?
Kidnapped and brought there. I guess.
They were brought there. So, imported. What's another word that sounds like it?
Deported.
Deported sounds like it. There's another one that we talk about when we talk about economics. We talk about importing goods and exporting goods. Good. So, the way that I try to remember importing and exporting, when I think of exporting, I think of stuff exiting the country. Right? You're exiting the country, something's leaving the country. That's exporting. Importing is bringing stuff into the country. So, looking at the reading here, it says that Montez and Ruiz, these are two guys, they bought 53 enslaved Africans in Havana, Cuba. The enslaved persons had been illegally kidnapped in West Africa and imported into Cuba. So they were brought into Cuba from West Africa. Montez and Ruiz forged papers. What is forged? What is forged? If you've ever forged your mother's signature. Kitara, what is forged? You fake it, right? Okay? So they forged some papers indicating that the Africans were born in Cuba and were legally enslaved there. Then they loaded the Africans onto the Cuban ship Amistad and sailed for Puerto Principe, a Cuban coastal town. Would someone like to read? Mariah, thank you.
On the fourth night at sea, the Africans got free and killed the Amistad's captain and cook. They spared Montez and Ruiz so they could steer the ship back to Africa. Montez did slowly sail towards Africa, but at night he headed west, hoping to land in the southern United States.
So what happened here in this paragraph? What happened? Jasper.
They got caught in Montez and Ruiz. They didn't get killed.
So those two were they were spared, right? Okay. Were they let go?
No.
They didn't get killed though.
They didn't get killed, so their lives were spared. Who's in charge of the ship?
Or now or
Who?
before?
In paragraph 2. Who's in charge of the ship? Kenneth? Okay, so Jasper said that Montez and Ruiz were in charge of the ship at first, and then Kenneth is saying that the Africans came in being in charge. What happened?
I know who it is.
What happened? What happened, Kitara?
The Africans got free and they killed the captain.
Okay, do we know exactly how it all went down?
No.
No? This is a point where, you can kind of let your imagination go. I can picture that maybe they're steering the ship, and the first mate and the captain are getting a little bit tired, and one might doze off, and these Africans that have been kidnapped saw the opportunity, and they seized the opportunity to take over. They had plenty of time on the boat, right? They were kidnapped where? West Africa, and transported to Cuba. It takes about 3 months to cross. So they had plenty of time on this boat to figure out and to make a plan, right? Right? When you make a plan and you see it come together like the A-Team talks about, that was always one of my favorite shows. Well, we're going to find out. Okay, so they executed their plan, and we've got the next paragraph. what was happening? So they allowed Montez and Ruiz to survive so that they could do what? Steer the ship. Good, Hattie. And they told them to go where? The slaves told them to do what? Go back to Africa. They wanted to go home. I can imagine. But what was happening at night? What was happening, Brad?
Let me see, was it Montez? Montez, he steered the ship, tried to go backwards, and he, not backwards, but he steered the ship trying to land the ship, hoping to land in the southern United States.
Okay, good. So he was trying not to have to go back to Africa, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So they were captured in West Africa. They were captured in West Africa. They made the journey to Cuba. Okay, and then from Cuba, 4 nights into the trip, where they were headed toward the United States to drop off their cargo, there's an incident, right? And the Africans take over the ship. So we'll call it what the papers called it at the time, a mutiny. And the Africans tell the 2 men to head back to Africa. And so they started off to Africa, but then at night they would jog back. And so they were kind of doing this all along the way till they get to the United States, right? Well, that was their hope anyway. Let's see if it comes true. Okay, the third paragraph here. Anybody want to read? Mark, thank you.
After 6 weeks, the Amistad ended up off the coast of New York. On August 26, 1839, 2 fishers encountered the core of the Africans. The fishers planned to build a salvage plane on the ship. A legal request for a reward for recovering the Amistad and its cargo. Before they could,
and then there's a
Lieutenant
comma there.
Thomas R.
Gedney.
Gedney, commander of the U.S. Coast Guard ship, Washington found the Amistad and towed it to New London, Connecticut. On board, he found Montez and Ruiz and the surviving Africans.
Okay, good. Thank you. So they get off the coast of the United States, the east coast of the United States, and it says some fishers encountered 4 of the Africans. What's a fisher? What do you think it is? What do you think it is, Mark? Yeah, I mean that's what I would think. Is that fishermen, right? Probably in a small boat, and they see the Amistad. And thank you, Katara. Remember that they said that there was a reward. There was a reward out for this ship. The ship had been missing for quite some time. Miss Adams. Yeah, that's funny. Thanks. So this ship had been missing, and I can imagine that there was a reward out for it. Let's see. So did they have the ability to tow the ship? Well, it says Lieutenant Thomas R. Gedney, commander of the U.S. Coast Guard ship Washington, found the Amistad and towed it to London. This kind of gives me the idea that the general, who's got this big ship, he cuts them off, doesn't he? Mm-hmm. They were like, hey, we see, oh my gosh, it says Amistad on the side. Is that the boat that they've been talking about in the papers? Yeah, I think it is. Isn't there a reward? And then all of a sudden this big, huge sailing vessel comes by and probably causes a wave and flips their boat over, and and he hooks up and steals the prize, right? Kind of like someone stealing your spot at the parking lot at the mall, right? Okay, Chloe, you had your hand up. You wanted to read the next paragraph?
Both
Gedney?
Gedney and the Fishers
Filed?
slave
Salvage?
claims in court. Montes and
Ruiz?
filed
Filed? It's okay.
filed and claimed as the slaveholders asked the court to turn over the ship and the Africans to the Spanish government. The U.S. District
Attorney?
in Connecticut,
William?
Holabird wanted the Africans to be released to the custody of the United States. At first, Holabird suggested that the enslaved prisoners should be returned to Africa, but later he argued that they should be returned to Montes and Ruiz and tried in court for piracy and murder.
What's going on with them? It's like, do they really know what to do with the Africans?
No.
They're confused about what to even do with them. And people keep flip-flopping on what they should do and what they shouldn't do. Okay, the last paragraph here. Takara, you want to read? Go ahead.
Abolitionists organized a defense for the Africans, whose trial began in January 1840. The court ordered the Africans to be delivered to President Van Buren and returned to Africa. This angered Van Buren, who expected the court to order the
Enslaved people.
to be returned to Cuba. The United States government appealed the decision. The U.S. Supreme Court appealed most of the decision in March 1841.
Can I stop you right there? And I'll let you finish it in just a minute. But she just read that it angered Van Buren. Okay, that it says the court ordered the Africans to be delivered to President Van Buren and returned to Africa. And this made the president unhappy. So Van Buren, do you think he was pro-slavery or anti-slavery at this point? He was probably pro-slavery, right, Ron? Yeah, and he says it angered him. The president expected the court to order the enslaved people to be returned to Cuba. The U.S. government appealed the decision. What does it mean if you appeal a decision? Deontay, what do you think? If you appeal a decision, it means to go with it. If I appeal the decision. I've been convicted of a crime, but I think the court was biased and that they were wrong, and I'm going to appeal the conviction. What does it mean? Deontay? I'll say it again. You can't opt out here. I was charged with a crime. The court convicted me. I don't think the jury really heard the whole truth. And so I'm going to, even though I was convicted, I'm going to appeal the conviction. To say it what? To set up a new one? To set up a new trial? Is that what you're saying? When you appeal something, someone help them out. Someone help them out. Hattie?
Like go against, or you know what they're saying, but you just don't agree.
Okay. help out a little more. Help out a little more. If I appeal something, what do you think it is, Chloe?
I think it's where you have to argue, like you need to get the truth out there. You don't
Hear what she's saying?
like
You're going to argue against to try and get the truth out.
and not try to get.
Okay, so there are plenty of people that have been convicted of crimes that they didn't commit, and you have a right to appeal the decision. So let's say that something happens, you get convicted of a crime, and you didn't, and you got convicted of it, you're sent to jail. You can contact an attorney and say, hey, this wasn't right. So they appeal it. Kevin, there's some tissue over here, buddy. So they appealed it, and then and it was the government. The U.S. government appeals the decision. So the U.S. Supreme Court gets the decision, and it says, Takara was reading for us, and it said, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld most of the lower court's decision in March of 1841. Finish that up.
It determined that the enslaved persons who were African natives who were kidnapped and unlawfully, is that right?
Yes.
Unlawfully transported to Cuba, and maliciousness raised money to send them back to West Africa. And 35 survivors lived in January 1842.
Okay, so they get sent back in January of 1842. There's only 35 of them. How many were original? How many were there originally? How many, Brent?
53.
53. So some died along the way. Kevin, you need to go to the bathroom? Go. So some died along the way. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put the assessment up and give you an opportunity. We've got a couple stacks of paper here that you'll use in order to make your decision. On what to do. And we will have an exit ticket in order to close this out at the end of the hour. Okay, so it says here you must pick two. This is the Amistad Choice Assessment. The first one says to construct a timeline of events relating to the Amistad case. So we've done lots of timelines in here. This one's not a very difficult one for you to kind of wrap your brain around because we're very familiar with timelines. You could literally use the reading to create the timeline, okay? You don't have to search in the book because it gives you a list of the dates. Now you also have the luxury of a little bit of technology in here. We got 3 Chromebooks, and we've also got some of you have cell phones on you, and you can connect to the Wi-Fi, or you probably already connected. Pulling up a timeline. We've got a website here. It's nps.gov/nr/travel/Amistad. If you type that into a browser, you can pull up maps, you can pull up timelines, you can pull up all kinds of stuff to help you. Hold on just a minute, Chloe. You got to pick 2. So choice 1, if you like that, you can do it. Choice 2, research the voyages of the Amistad captives and create a detailed map charting their journey. Include all the stages of the captives' travels from capture to return. So I've got a map that's already printed out for you, and then you would demonstrate their journey. And then here in the Pacific Ocean, you got lots of room. You could describe the events. I'm not looking for complete sentences necessarily. They can be little fragments. It's not a problem. So if you say they started in West Africa, that was number 1. Then over here you put number 1, kidnapped in West Africa. Chloe, I said I'd get you in just a second.